Our story begins today at the Jedi Temple in the year 19 BBY. Order 66 has devastated the Jedi all throughout the galaxy as Darth Sidious has executed the plan of the Sith, as the Republic has fallen, and the First Galactic Empire is rising. Yet there is still hope. It is unknown how many Jedi survived Order 66, but there is a beacon from the Jedi Temple calling for all Jedi to return, that the war is over. It is because of this that Masters Yoda and Kenobi had to return to Coruscant and fight their way through the clones at the temple to change the message, to protect any survivors who may have survived the initial attack. But once the message had been changed, Obi Wan needed to know more. The Jedi had been betrayed, but he had no idea who could have done this. Dooku was dead, Maul was on Mandalore, the Chancellor must have gotten a new apprentice. The younglings had been killed by a lightsaber, not by blasters. Yoda had warned him not to look in the security archives, but Obi-Wan needed to know. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would see. Anakin was responsible for the attack on the Jedi Temple. Anakin had led the clones to kill all the Jedi who were here. Obi-Wan couldn't believe what he was seeing. Anakin couldn't have done this. This wasn't the boy he trained, the man who had become his friend, his brother even. But before he could come to terms with it, Yoda was saying that they had to destroy the Sith. Obi-Wan couldn't bring himself to kill Anakin. He still had to be in there. But Yoda knew that Obi-Wan wouldn't be strong enough to defeat the Emperor. Though he had his mission, Obi-Wan didn't know how to find Anakin. All he could think to do was to go to Padme. If Anakin had done... He couldn't even bring himself to say it. He was a threat and had to be stopped. And if he could betray the Jedi, then Padme would be the only one who could possibly know how to find him. Though he wondered how much she would know. He couldn't imagine her supporting this new empire. Obi-Wan. That was his former master, Qui-Gon Jinn. But he was dead. How could this be? Train the boy. It was as if the Force was speaking to him, reminding him of the promise he had made to his master all those years ago. Maybe there was still hope. Anakin may not have been a typical Jedi, but he was extremely loyal. There had to be a reason he did this. And Yoda had never believed in him. Of course Anakin was still a threat, but Obi-Wan had to give him a chance. And if he had had any doubt about that, it was gone after briefly talking to Padme. She clearly had no idea what Anakin had been doing, and he had been lying to her. He must have had some doubts about turning to the dark side. But to go as far as he did, it wouldn't be easy. Any plan to redeem Anakin would require Padme. He had loved her since he was a small boy. He was the father of her child. She wouldn't tell him where Anakin was, though, but he knew that he had gotten through to her, and that she was going to be going wherever he was, so he decided to follow her. Once on the Mustafar system, he knew that the best chance to turn Anakin back to the light was to let Padme talk to him alone. But Obi-Wan felt a chill. There was a darkening presence, something horribly familiar as Anakin seemed to be slipping deeper into the dark side of the Force. And when Obi-Wan revealed himself, things immediately got worse. Anakin had immediately let his rage take over and choked Padme until she collapsed. Obi-Wan couldn't believe that his former Padawan could fall this far, but here he was, a Sith Lord. Anakin, we have to get her medical attention. But Anakin only yelled that Obi-Wan would not take her from him. This was not his apprentice. This was Darth Vader. Obi-Wan didn't want to do it, but he was a very big threat. He would do what he must. The duel would go as it had before, with Anakin aggressively trying to take off Obi-Wan's head, yet he was unable to penetrate the defenses of the Master of Sarisu, increasingly frustrating the newly minted Sith Lord, who was struggling with his commitment to the dark side. Eventually, the two would be floating over the lava. Obi-Wan had noticed that Anakin wasn't fighting as smoothly as he normally would. Perhaps there was still a chance. He had to try. For his master, for himself, for the galaxy, for his brother. I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you. I should have known the Jedi were trying to take over. Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine is evil. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Obi-Wan could feel his frustration growing. How could Anakin think the Jedi were evil? He nearly let the exhaustion get the better of him, but he kept his head. If Anakin was willing to talk, maybe he would be willing to listen to Obi Wan. He had to try. They didn't call him the negotiator for nothing. He would ask why Anakin thought the Jedi were evil now, and Anakin would tell him that the Jedi were going to overthrow Palpatine. Obi-Wan would then confirm that yes, they would overthrow Palpatine because he was a Sith Lord, and not only that, he was the one behind the war and had been playing both sides of it. Anakin would struggle to respond to this, so he would simply say that he ended the Clone Wars because of the dark side, that they had been unable to end it for years because of the lies of the Jedi. Yet, Obi-Wan could feel the conflict in Anakin as he said it. Whatever he had done here, he must have felt bad about it somewhere deep down. Obi-Wan could guess what he had done. There were no separatists or battle droids here after all. But Obi-Wan wouldn't say anything about that. He would simply ask why Anakin thought he needed the dark side, that they could have stopped Sidious together. He wanted to know what the Dark Lord of the Sith had promised him. Anakin would finally break down, unable to come up with any other reason why he had joined the Sith, and he would tell his former master that Padme was going to die in childbirth, and he needed Palpatine's teachings to save her from death. Obi-Wan would have to fight the urge to roll his eyes at his friend. He wanted to save her and had done unspeakable things in the name of doing it, yet he had also just choked out the pregnant woman he loved. "Anakin, we can go and save Padme now. Then we can fix things." "I have fixed things. There's no more war. You are the one who wants to prolong it." "You know what peace is to the Sith, Anakin. Maul was the initial apprentice. He killed Qui-Gon on Palpatine's order. All the attacks by Dooku. His orders. Even the attacks on Padme. Do you really think that someone who has been trying to kill her for over 10 years will save her?" Obi-Wan knew he was taking a risk, but Padme was the key to getting him back, and he knew it was working. He wasn't talking to Vader anymore. This was Anakin. "It's too late for me, Master. I don't know who I am anymore." But Obi-Wan did. As he looked into the teary eyes of his former Padawan, he saw that young boy he agreed to train on Naboo all those years ago. The tears streaking down his ash-covered cheeks, like he was mourning Qui-Gon and missing his mother all over again. "It's never too late, Anakin. We can save Padme and put a stop to this empire. Together." Obi-Wan then noticed they were getting close to a lava fall and jumped to the high ground. But there was something even darker looming towards them. It wasn't Anakin, though. It must have been Palpatine. Yoda must have failed. "Anakin, please. We have to leave now if we're going to save Padme." Yet Anakin made no move for them to flee. He jumped onto the rocks, but he seemed to know Sidious was coming too. Yet he still made no move as Obi-Wan could feel his presence darkening again. Obi-Wan was no longer worried for himself, though. It seemed all he had done was direct Anakin's anger towards Palpatine, but he couldn't let him fight in this state. He was going to be tired from their own duel, and he was still torn between the dark and the light. Anakin could not only fail and be killed because of this, he could succeed and fully embrace the dark side. He would nearly be begging Anakin to come with him now, that Padme and his child needed him, that they could come up with a plan for Palpatine later. But if they waited, they would risk Padme's and their child's life. "Anakin, if Palpatine is coming, that means Yoda failed. Between that and you turning back, it means he was wrong. We can fight another day." But Anakin made no move to leave. "Anakin, Padme and your child need you. Alive." That would get a reaction from him, but not the one that Obi-Wan had wanted. Anakin clearly now felt guilt over what he had done, that he didn't deserve redemption, and wanted to do one last good thing, or die trying. But Obi-Wan would tell him that redemption would come, but it couldn't be now. The Jedi had been wrong. It was what got them here. They needed to regroup and listen to the Force. Hearing his master say the Jedi were wrong would finally get Anakin to leave with Obi-Wan, as the two would get Padme onto her ship, and they would go to Polis Massa, where they would meet with Bail Organa, and to Obi-Wan's surprise, Master Yoda. Bail and Yoda would both be surprised to see Anakin, but of course neither would be happy to see him, as Yoda would believe that this was a trick by the young Sith Lord. Before he could react, though, Padme would wake up and would want Anakin at her side as she gave birth to Luke and Leia. During this time, Palpatine would search through the Force for Vader's presence, yet he couldn't feel him. He was able to feel he was in danger across the galaxy. He knew he could feel Vader wherever he may be. If he couldn't, then Kenobi must have killed him. All the time wasted grooming him, but he had served his purpose. The Sith would rule again, but Palpatine would need a plan. Yoda was still out there. Kenobi was a much greater threat than anticipated. He needed an apprentice who could succeed where Vader had failed. Back on Polis Massa, the time had come to discuss what our heroes would do next. Padme survived childbirth. Anakin had been wrong in his visions and had done terrible things. Yet, the Empire had risen. They had a lot to do, and it was difficult to say where to start, but they needed all the help they could get. For the safety of the twins, it would be decided that they would fake Padme's death, that she had died in childbirth, so the Emperor would believe that Anakin's visions came true. She and Bail had already begun planting the seeds for rebellion with the Council of 2000, but they had to work in the shadows. Bail would have to ingratiate himself with the new Empire so that Alderaan wouldn't be targeted. This would especially be important as Padme and the twins were to be hidden on Alderaan. Once Anakin and Obi Wan's whereabouts were discussed, though, Yoda said that he would go to Dagobah. Obi Wan would ask the Grand Master why he wasn't going to stay and fight, but deep down he knew the answer. He had never believed in Anakin, and now, after all he had done, Yoda was proven right. But the Jedi had failed too, and if they were going to save the galaxy, they had to come together. But Yoda would not join the rebellion, believing that he would one day train the one who would defeat the Sith, perhaps one of the Skywalker children, given their father wouldn't be involved in their training, but he would still show Obi-Wan how to commune with Qui-Gon, something that Skywalker should not be capable of doing. And with that, they would leave Polis Massa with Yoda going to Dagobah, and Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme going to Alderaan with Bail, with the goal of strengthening the rebellion. The first days would be slow for them, though. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme would have to remain hidden, because if they were discovered, the Emperor himself would get involved. But Bail would still work from the shadows, ensuring Padme's funeral went without a hitch, where he would contact Ahsoka Tano, and making sure his loyalty wasn't questioned by the new Empire. It was essential for any plans they had. Years would pass as the rebellion grew in the shadows, with Bail and Padme leading. As for all the public knew, Padme was dead, and Bail was a loyal Imperial senator. Obi-Wan wouldn't struggle as much as he had before, because he and Anakin would be working through their fears together, as they would discuss where they both had failed, and what they would do when the time came for them to take on Sidious. It would take time for Anakin to gain back Obi-Wan and Padme's trust fully. They both obviously wanted what was best for him, but they still knew what he had done. But with their love, and the love for his children, he was able to purge the darkness within him. And Luke and Leia would begin to show the Force was strong with them. Anakin and Padme would look to Obi-Wan on when their training should begin. Anakin was worried that he was too old to have begun training and would want them to be trained at a younger age, but Obi-Wan would suggest patience. The Force would let them know when the twins would need to be trained. This sign would come when Bail Organa would come to them with an old friend, who had stayed in hiding as a farmer for years, but had been discovered by the Inquisitors. Ahsoka Tano would be brought to Alderaan, ready to join the rebellion. It would then be decided that Obi-Wan would train Luke and Ahsoka would train Leia, as the rebellion would continue to grow stronger. Or at least they would, until they would learn of the Empire's new weapon, the Death Star. The sheer destructive power of the planet killer would lead to many rebellion leaders wanting to surrender, until a rogue squadron would leave Yavin 4 to attack Scarif. And for as much as Anakin behaved over the last 19 years, he wasn't going to stay out of this fight. And with Anakin's help, the rebels were able to win the day and gain the knowledge of the Death Star. But there was one problem. Anakin was seen by Palpatine's new enforcer, Darth Maul. The two had dueled as Maul went after the plans for the Death Star, but he was unable to defeat Anakin, only escaping with his life. But the jig was up. The Sith knew that Anakin Skywalker was alive and with the rebels. And unbeknownst to Anakin, Maul had managed to put a tracker on his ship, knowing Sidious would kill him if he couldn't bring him to Skywalker. And once the rebels returned to Yavin 4, they would confirm Jyn Erso's story, that the Death Star had a fatal weakness, and a precise shot could start a chain reaction that would blow it up, but they had to act quickly because the Empire was coming. And when the Death Star came, the rebels were ready, as Anakin and Luke led the dogfight, culminating in Luke blowing up the Death Star after Anakin saved him from Maul. But Maul would not be deterred. The only Imperial survivors were the ones outside the Death Star's orbit, and he would turn back to Yavin 4, wanting revenge on Skywalker, and hopefully Kenobi as well. He would get his wish as he would learn that Kenobi and Ahsoka were here as well with the rebels, believing they could destroy the Sith. But there had to be a reason they had stayed hidden for so long. Perhaps Skywalker was not the Chosen One, and they were all protecting the real Chosen One. But once he revealed he knew this to Kenobi, Obi Wan couldn't let him return to the Emperor. Maul swiftly attacked first, but Obi Wan was ready, quickly slashing through the chest of the Sith Lord, who would die asking if it really was the Chosen One, and upon learning it was, that they would avenge them for all Sidious had done to the galaxy. The rebels would still have to flee Yavin 4, though. The Empire knew where their base was now. But Obi-Wan and Anakin would realize that they would have to go to the Emperor now, that they wouldn't be safe no matter where they went. Padme would be against this, that there had to be another way, but Anakin was sure it was needed. Luke and Leia would want to join them, of course, but neither their parents nor their masters would allow it. The rebels needed them in case they failed, as Obi-Wan would privately tell Ahsoka to send them to Yoda on Dagobah if he and Anakin did not return. The two would immediately travel to Coruscant, where it almost seemed like the Emperor was waiting for them. They were instructed to land near the Emperor's chambers as they were taken to him by the Imperial Guard. Palpatine would be waiting for them as he would confirm that Maul was dead before trying to appeal to Anakin, that all would be forgiven if he killed Kenobi and told him where the rebels were, that Padme and his children would be safe if they served him. At the mention of Padme, Luke, and Leia, Anakin would take out his lightsaber and attack Sidious, who would quickly blast lightning at him, keeping him back. Good. Your anger is still there. You can serve me quite well. I will give you one last chance, or I will kill every man, woman, and child who has ever associated with you. But Anakin would not turn to the dark side again, as he and Obi-Wan would duel with Palpatine and the Guard, with Obi-Wan quickly incapacitating them as Anakin tried to overpower the Emperor. Sidious would have to divide and conquer, to fight them as he had trained Dooku to all those years ago, force Kenobi to attack while putting Skywalker on the defensive, and when he divided them, he blasted Kenobi with lightning, then pulled him close and stabbed him through the gut with his red blade. The Force itself blasted out of Anakin, sending back the Emperor as Anakin reached for his master, his brother, the one person who had always believed in him. Anakin, you are a good person. I'm so proud of you. And then Obi-Wan disappeared, becoming one with the Force. Anakin found himself crushed over the death of his master, but he knew he was one with the Force now, that both of them had trained with Qui-Gon, and it had worked. But Palpatine had no idea how this happened, and in his fear gave Anakin one last chance to join him, or he could join his dead master. Anakin was certain in his beliefs now, though. He wasn't the same kid who gave in to his fear all those years ago. He was a Jedi, and he would fight as one. Palpatine realized his mistake too late. He shouldn't have brought Anakin here. He shouldn't have let Kenobi join him. The last mistake he ever made was thinking he could have Vader back to destroy the rebellion. But the war would not immediately end with Palpatine's death. His loyalists would try to cling to power against the rebellion, but would eventually be forced to flee as the new Republic would rise in the ashes of the Empire, as Bail Organa would be named Chancellor. Ahsoka and the Skywalkers would rebuild the Jedi Order. Anakin would then retire from the Order to spend his life with Padme, as she continued to work with Bail as the galaxy would once again know peace. And that's my story for today. Let me know in the comments what you think of this slice of fried gold, or if you have any other ideas for what ifs. But that's all I've got for you guys today, so drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.